Lena sat in her room, staring out of the window as the night wrapped around her like a cold, suffocating blanket. The world outside seemed quiet, almost too quiet, as if it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. The streets were empty, the trees swayed gently in the wind, and the moon hid behind a veil of dark clouds, barely casting a faint light over the earth. The world seemed distant, far away from her, just like she felt. Her room, once a place of comfort, now felt more like a prison. The walls, once comforting and familiar, felt like they were closing in on her, pushing her deeper into her own mind. She couldn't escape it. No matter where she went or what she did, the thoughts never left. They followed her like a shadow, always lurking, always waiting for her to give in. Lena had always been the quiet, thoughtful type. She had spent most of her life reading, dreaming, and contemplating the world around her. But lately, everything had changed. The world had become a blur, a series of disconnected moments that she couldn't piece together. Her thoughts were dark, tangled with anxiety and despair, and every attempt to pull herself out only seemed to make things worse. She often found herself asking, "What's the point? What's the point of any of this?" It was a question that had haunted her for weeks, and it felt as though it was slowly eating away at her, piece by piece. The people around her didn't seem to notice, or perhaps they didn't care. Her friends tried to reach out, tried to offer comfort, but their words felt hollow, distant. They couldn't possibly understand what she was going through. How could they? They hadn't lived inside her mind. She had tried so hard to keep up appearances, to act like everything was fine. She smiled when she needed to, spoke when she was expected to, but deep inside, she was sinking. The mask she wore was becoming more and more difficult to maintain. She was tired, so very tired. Tired pretending, tired of fighting, tired of being stuck. The overwhelming weight of everything was too much for her to bear. Her thoughts constantly spiraled, reminding her of her failures, her insecurities, her mistakes. She felt small, insignificant, and utterly lost. It was as if there was an invisible hand around her throat, slowly tightening with every breath she took. Her heart would race for no reason at all, and her chest would tighten with a feeling of impending doom. She couldn't explain it, but it was always there, lurking in the background, ready to pounce. The quiet moments were the worst, the moments when there was no distraction, no noise to mask the sound of her own thoughts. In those moments, the weight of her emotions felt unbearable. Lena had always been an optimist, or at least she had tried to be. She had once believed that no matter how dark the days got, there was always a way out, a way to climb back up. But now she wasn't so sure. She no longer believed in the light at the end of the tunnel. It felt like the tunnel had no end, like she was trapped in a place that stretched on forever. Her mind drifted to her childhood, to the days when everything seemed so simple. She remembered the laughter of her friends, the carefree days of summer, the feeling of the sun on her skin. But those memories felt distant now, like they belonged to someone else, someone who wasn't her. The Lena who had once been full of hope and joy seemed like a stranger. As the hours passed, Lena found herself wandering through her thoughts, trying to find some sense of clarity. But there was none, just more confusion, more darkness. She felt like she was drowning, and no one could hear her cries. Every attempt to reach out felt like a failure. Every effort to get better seemed to make things worse. It was as if the world was telling her that she didn't belong here, that she didn't deserve happiness. She lay down on her bed, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. Why did she feel this way? What had happened to the girl who used to dream, who used to believe that everything would work out in the end? Where had she gone? The girl she had been seemed like a distant memory, a figment of the past that was now out of reach. The silence of the night pressing on her, filling her ears with the sound of her own heartbeat. It was a constant reminder that she was alive, but it didn't feel like a blessing. It felt like a burden. Every breath felt heavy, every movement sluggish. She wished for sleep, for escape, but sleep didn't come easily. Her mind wouldn't let her rest. She closed her eyes and tried to relax, but the thoughts wouldn't stop. They were like a relentless storm, crashing against her mind with no mercy. She couldn't escape them, couldn't make them go away. It was as if they were all she had left. And then, in the silence, she heard it. A soft sound, distant but familiar. A song. It was a song from her childhood. A song that had once brought her so much comfort. She recognized the tune immediately, and for a brief moment, something shifted inside her. The memories flooded back. Memories of happier times. Of simpler days. But then, just as quickly as the feeling had come, it was gone. The song faded into the background, and the darkness returned. Lena let out a shaky breath, her heart heavy. She wanted to believe that things could get better, that this was just a phase. But the reality was too overwhelming. She didn't know how much longer she could hold on. Lena's days felt like they bled into each other. Each morning, she awoke with a sense of dread, as though the weight of the world was on her chest, pressing down on her lungs, making it harder to breathe. The smallest tasks felt insurmountable. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, checking the time, hoping that the day would somehow pass quicker. But no matter how many hours passed, nothing ever seemed to change. She was stuck. Her life was stuck. She would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining a life that could be different. A life where she wasn't so tired all the time. A life where she didn't feel so lost. But those thoughts always faded as quickly as they came. The world outside her window was indifferent. Her friends were too busy with their lives, and she felt like a burden if she ever tried to reach out. It was easier to withdraw, to isolate herself, to let the darkness consume her. One afternoon, as she was walking to the park, Lena felt the pull of her memories. She passed by the same old bench where she and her best friend, Sarah, used to sit for hours, laughing, talking about their dreams and plans for the future. But now, the bench felt cold, empty. There was no laughter, no promise of a bright future. It was just another piece of the past, one that had slipped through her fingers like sand. Lena sat down on the bench, her eyes scanning the familiar surroundings. The trees were still standing tall, the flowers still blooming in vibrant colors, but everything felt distant. The world around her hadn't changed, yet she had. She no longer saw the beauty in the flowers or the joy in the birds singing. It all felt numb. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her out of her reverie. It was a message from Sarah. "Hey, how are you doing? We should catch up soon." Lena stared at the message for a long time. She wanted to respond, wanted to say something meaningful, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she locked her phone and slipped it back into her pocket, sighing deeply. The idea of reaching out, of having conversation, felt overwhelming. What could she say? How could she explain that she wasn't okay? That she hadn't been okay for a long time? That she didn't know how to get better? She missed Sarah. She missed the person she used to be, the one who was full of dreams and laughter. But now, Lena barely recognized herself. She had become a stranger to her own reflection. It felt as though she was living a life that wasn't hers, like she was walking through a fog, unable to find her way out. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Lena felt a strange sense of loss. It wasn't just for her past, but for the future she couldn't seem to grasp. The hope that had once filled her heart was now a distant memory, something she could barely remember. She had tried so hard to hold on, but the darkness was relentless. It seeped into every corner of her mind, leaving no room for light. That night, as Lena sat alone in her room, she found herself staring at her reflection in the mirror. She didn't recognize the person looking back at her. Her eyes were hollow, her face pale, her expression distant. She had tried to smile earlier, but it felt forced, unnatural. It was as if she had forgotten how to be happy. Lena had always been the kind of person who sought out the good in life, who tried to find the silver lining even in the darkest clouds. But now, she couldn't see the silver lining. The clouds had taken over, and they seemed so much bigger than they had before. Every thought was clouded with self-doubt, fear, and exhaustion. She thought about the conversations she used to have with Sarah. They had once talked about their dreams, their plans for the future. They had laughed about silly things, made plans to travel the world, to find love, to make a difference. But now, Lena wasn't sure what her dreams were anymore. They had faded into the background, lost in the haze of her depression. She had forgotten how to dream. She reached for the journal on her bedside table, a habit she had once kept religiously. Writing had always been an outlet for her, a way to express the emotions she couldn't say out loud. But as she flipped through the pages, she realized that there was nothing left to write. The pages were empty, just like her. What was there to say when everything felt like a blur? Lena felt her eyes welling up with tears. She didn't want to cry. She was tired of crying. It felt like nothing ever changed, no matter how much she cried. But the tears came anyway, spilling down her cheeks uncontrollably. She couldn't stop them. It was like they had been building up for so long, and now they had no place to go but down her face. Her chest tightened, and for a moment, she felt like she couldn't breathe. She was suffocating in her own mind. The darkness had taken over, and there seemed to be no way out. But then, a faint memory flickered in her mind. A memory of her mother's voice, soft and comforting. "You are stronger than you think. Lena, you can make it through this. You just have to take one step at a time." Lena wiped her tears away and closed her eyes. She tried to remember what it felt like to have hope, what it felt like to believe that things could get better. But it was so hard. The world felt so heavy, and the road ahead seemed too long. Still, she held on to that memory. The memory of her mother's words. Maybe she wasn't completely alone. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of this darkness. As Lena lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she made a silent promise to herself. Tomorrow, she would try again. She didn't know how, and she didn't know when, but she would try to find her way back. She had to. The night passed slowly, each tick of the clock a reminder of the hours that stretched on endlessly. But as Lena lay in bed, something had shifted inside her. The tears that had poured out of her the previous night felt different now. Like a release, a small but significant step towards something better. Morning arrived with soft light, creeping through the window, casting a warm glow on the room. The familiar weight of the world still pressed on Lena's chest, but it wasn't as suffocating as it had been before. There was a slight shift in the air, an imperceptible change that gave her a sense of possibility, however small. For the first time in weeks, she opened her eyes and didn't immediately feel the urge to pull the covers over her head and hide from the day. It was a subtle change, but it was enough to spark a glimmer of hope inside her. Maybe, just maybe, today could be different. Lena slowly sat up in bed, stretching her arms above her head. The act felt foreign, as though she hadn't done it in years, but it felt good. She took a deep breath, letting the air fill her lungs, feeling the coolness of it settle in her chest. She had forgotten what it felt like to breathe fully, to feel alive. The phone buzzed on her nightstand, and she instinctively reached for it. It was a message from Sarah. "Hey, I was thinking about you. How are you today?" Lena's heart skipped a beat. She stared at the message for a long moment, wondering how she could respond. Could she be honest? Could she admit that she was still struggling? Or would she just say, "I'm fine," like she always did? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the pressure to pretend. Instead, she took a deep breath and typed, "Honestly, I'm still struggling, but I'm trying. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm taking small steps." She hesitated for a second, unsure whether to hit send. But then, with a quiet resolve, she pressed a button. There, it was done. She had taken the first step in being open with someone about how she felt. Within minutes, Sarah replied, "I'm here for you, Lena. Always. We'll get through this together. Just take it one day at a time." Lena smiled, a soft, genuine smile that felt unfamiliar but warm. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel so alone. Sarah's words, though simple, meant more to her than she could express. It wasn't just the words themselves, but the reminder that she didn't have to carry everything on her own. She put the phone down and slowly stood up from the bed. The room still felt quiet and still, but there was a sense of peace in the air now. It wasn't a dramatic shift, but it was a start. Lena walked over to the window and opened the blinds, letting the light pour in. The world outside looked the same, but something about it felt different today. It was as if she was seeing for the first time a reminder that there was still beauty in the world, even if it was hard to see at times. She turned to her desk where the journal lay, still unopened. Lena had been avoiding it for weeks, unsure what to write, afraid of facing the emotions that she had buried so deep. But today, something urged her to pick it up. She sat down at her desk, her fingers hesitating over the blank page, and then, without thinking too much about it, she began to write. "I feel lost," she wrote, "like I'm walking through a fog, unable to see where I'm going. But I'm starting to believe that it's okay to feel lost. Maybe it's part of the journey. I don't know where this road leads, but I'm going to keep moving forward, one step at a time." She closed the journal, feeling a small sense of relief. Writing had always been an outlet for her, and she realized that she had been avoiding it because it forced her to face the things she didn't want to confront. But now, the act of writing felt cathartic, like a tiny release of the burden she had been carrying. Lena spent the rest of the day taking things slowly. She went for a walk in the park, allowing herself to enjoy the simple things, the rustle of the leaves in the breeze, the sound of children laughing as they played, the warmth of the sun on her skin. She wasn't pretending to be happy, but for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to be present in the moment, to feel the world around her. When she returned home, she felt a sense of quiet accomplishment. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She had faced the day, not by ignoring her feelings, but by acknowledging them. She had taken a step toward healing, however small it might have been. That night, as she lay in bed, Lena felt a new sense of peace wash over her. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from everything being perfect or easy, but the kind that came from knowing that she was still fighting, still trying, still moving forward. And that, in itself, was enough. As she closed her eyes, she thought back to her mother's words. "You are stronger than you think, Lena." She wasn't sure she fully believed them yet, but for the first time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could. Tomorrow was a new day, and that thought, simple as it was, gave Lena a quiet hope, one step at a time.